Thank you for joining me this morning. My name is Kevin Fitzgerald. Uh, I am the director of the Information Technology Project Management Office, and I used to be the director of the Project Management Office for the Health Sciences Center that was out of the Provost Office. And today I'm going to be talking with you about lean and meaningful project documentation. These techniques and document templates I'm going to show you didn't come from any book. They came from 20 years of trying to figure out how to be an effective project manager. So what I'm about to show you has worked very well for me in my environment. Your mileage may vary, but I'm hoping that it will be helpful for you. First of all, let's talk about what lean and meaningful means. If this is all about getting things done, it's because with minimal documentation, because documents don't make decisions and they don't code and they don't do any configurations. In order for you to be a successful project manager, you've got to get information into the head of the people that make the decisions, the people that do the coding, and the people that do the configuration. Your job is to make access to that information as easy as possible. And one of the things I prescribe a lot is push information to people. Don't expect them to pull it. I don't send people emails with links to information I want them to have, and I don't put attachments on emails. If I want them to have information and I'm going to send it to them in email, I put it in the body of the email. One way to look at this is a continuum of project management complexity, where on one side you've got complex metrics and lots of documentation and logs and all kinds of artifacts. And on the other end of the spectrum, you've got get or done. This presentation I'm giving to you is all about just getting things done. In today's agenda, we're going to talk about, first of all, we're going to talk about the newspaper style of writing. And the reason I'm going to bring that up is because the way newspapers are written is a very effective means of communicating. And I advocate it as a style you should try for all your business communications. So we'll go over the newspaper style of writing briefly. Then I'm going to talk about 3 project documents that we use for all of our projects. The project plan, a document we call the agenda/status reports, because all of our meetings have an agenda and a status report, and it's all combined into one document. And then I'm going to talk about closure reports. Now, I get excited about these ideas and I start lecturing and I start talking. And if we were all in a meeting room together and you raised your hand, or if you just kind of leaned out toward me, I'd notice that and we could engage and have a conversation. You could ask a question or make a comment, but I can't see you in this setting. So I want everybody in the room to feel free to open up your mic and stop me and ask a question or make a comment. All right, let's get started. Let's talk about writing in general, the newspaper style of writing. Now, the academic form of writing is typically to go and explain the background history of the issue, all of the contributing factors that led to our current situation, explain the details of the current situation, and then finish with a recommended solution. And I don't advocate that at all. I would like to show you this idea of how newspapers are written. And it's not just newspapers. It started there, but you see it the same style in a lot of news feeds. Newspapers have 4 important elements, but the 3 elements of the articles in the newspaper themselves are the headline, and this is typically a single sentence that summarizes the message, the meaning of the story, then leading phrases, and that's the first couple sentences where you're explaining the entire thing, and then article content. So the headline, local woman wins lottery. Leading phrases, Nancy Smith of Moore, Oklahoma, won the lottery. She's going to spend the money on paying off her home loan and donate the rest to her local school. Article content, Nancy's been playing the lottery for a number of years. Her and her husband picked the numbers based on their children's birth dates. That's kind of how newspapers are designed. And the idea is that you provide a menu of information on the front page. People glance through the headlines. They read the leading phrases if they're interested. And if they want more information, they turn to page 8 for the article content. I'm going to illustrate how this can be used in status reports for projects. Another important element of the style of writing is the 5 W's, and sometimes we say the 5 W's and H, but the 5 W's are who, what, when, where, why. If you are able to hit all of those points in your business communications and write them in the newspaper style, you're going to find that you're getting information to people in just the right amounts. People that only need to know the highest levels of information get it because they see the headline. People that need a little more detail read into your article or your business communication and they read the leading phrases. Then they may want to get into the details. So that's the newspaper style of writing. It's a topic I go over in any kind of class where I want to talk about how to write status reports. And again, I'll show some examples of that. Somebody asked if I'll be making the slides available. If you would like a copy of this presentation, email me and I'll send you a copy. And if for some reason you need some kind of a certification or something that you attended this class to show your boss, email me and I'll reply that you were in the class. All right, let's talk about our first, the project documents. I'm going to talk about 3 document templates. The plan, which is a document with just enough to execute, escalate, and control a project. Project plans are kind of like the handbook for the project. I'm going to show you a template for that, and I'm going to explain the elements of it and why they're important. Then we're going to talk about status reports and agendas, your formal communication to people around you as the project is progressing, and then about the closure report, important information for the future. So let's talk about the lean and meaningful project plan. Now, one thing I want to say is that I'm going to be using terms very strictly defined by PMI.org, the Project Management International Organization. And that is a plan is kind of a handbook for a project. It's everything you need to know to run the project. Some people say plan, and they mean a series of steps of where work gets done. And that's not what us PMI folks call that. We call that a schedule. Another term that gets tossed around a lot is charter. And I often hear people talk about a project charter, but when I hear what they mean, they are actually saying project plan. A project charter is a single-page document with just enough information for a leader to decide if they want to execute the project or not. A project plan is a complete handbook. Our project plan template, the one I'm about to show you, intentionally uses the first page as a charter. We don't have a separate template for the charter. It's the first page of the plan. So if I have to assign a project manager to go write a charter so that we can provide information to a leader to decide if they're going to execute the project or not, I tell them just go get the first page of the project plan document filled out. And while you're there, capture any other information that may be available for other parts of the project plan. But when you're done, we'll print that first page to a PDF and send it to the leader so that they can make a decision. This document also contains information about the project teams and governance, how you escalate issues, goals, objectives, and deliverables. There's a page in there for a schedule if your project has one. And then the last page talks about how we're going to communicate, and it's more of a boilerplate set of instructions. So let's look at the first page of the project plan, or if you needed a charter, just this first page. This is an example of the Word template we use for project plans, and it starts with the project value overview. This might just say overview, and it would be a basically high-level description of the project, what you're trying to achieve. But we have found that it's extremely important to state that overview in terms of the strategic value of the project to the stakeholders in the organization. If you can't figure out what strategic value this project you're doing serves, you should question whether or not you should be doing it. Also, we use this statement in our status reports that I'll show you in the second part of the project presentation, and we put it at the top so that when we're communicating with the project team and stakeholders and steering committee and the executives, we're constantly reminding them of why we're doing this project and why it's important. The next part of this template talks about project goals. Very straightforward. What kinds of things are we trying to achieve? I like to see these in terms of outcomes. What is better because you did this project? But sometimes it's just tasks that are going to be achieved. And sometimes goals will have supporting objectives that we know. We're not going to get into great detail on it on the front page. This is just the overview page or the charter. This next section talks about scope. When are you going to start and when are you going to finish? What teams are involved? What colleges or departments are involved in this project? Do we have a basic cost? What's the impact on business? If you're going to make drastic changes to the way payroll is run, that's going to make a big impact on the business, and it's an important component of your scope. In fact, if the impact was that large, I would recommend that you use the section at the bottom, which is a separate section called out for risks, impacts, assumptions, and constraints. And then one of the questions I like to ask in my scope is, are we in a hurry? Are we underfunded? Because there's an iron triangle of scope in any project where you have three elements: time, internal resource availability, and money to buy external resources. If you're in a hurry, then it's going to take more money to get this project done, and it's going to take a lot of internal resources. If you don't have any funding to run this project, then you can't be in a hurry. You're going to have to use only the internal resources you've got, and that's going to take longer. I ask this question because if we know what kind of constraints we're under in this way, it makes it a lot easier for people on the project to make decisions. By the way, if you ask also, yep, that's the next question. I thought that might be it. I'd be also happy to send you these templates. Next section of the first page is a summary milestone or schedule. This isn't a detailed schedule, but sometimes it's a good idea to illustrate when we're going to get started, when development is occurring, when testing is occurring, when the go live is, and especially important if there's some business driver. If your goal is to complete this project before the next semester starts, that's an important element to call out in your milestone schedule on the first page. And the last section on the front page is risks, impacts, assumptions, and constraints. Now, you don't have to make up things for this section. The risk of an earthquake is not specific to your project. That's a risk for everybody. Well, not so much in Oklahoma, but it could be. No, these are real things that are specific to your project. We can't start this project until this other project finishes, or we can't start this project until new resources become available. Those are the kinds of things that go on the front page of the project plan. Let's move on to the second page. I consider this page to be the most important page in the project plan. Who's going to be working on the project? Who's the steering committee that will help you make decisions? And who's the executive sponsors to whom you will escalate if things really go off the rails? Now, the way this typically works, I'm going to start in the middle. Got the project teams. I want to know what project manager is running it. That's the question mark there under the project management office. I tend to be a permanent member of any project team members project management office. And let me make a distinction here. An organization can have a project management office with a bunch of project managers in it, but every project has a virtual project management office of the project managers working on that one project. And I want to be a part of the PMO, virtual PMO for every project we do. Then below that, you'll see a place for name. What teams are involved with this? What functional owners are involved? Which campus are they from? Is there a vendor associated with your project? We want those people's names. And I've got a section at the bottom called Others Not Included in the Weekly Status Meetings, because everybody in the middle of this page, excuse me, is going to be going to status meetings and expected to report progress. But everybody on this page is going to receive the status reports generated from those meetings. Now, one thing I want to talk about on this is governance and escalation. I typically trust the members of my project teams, the ones listed there in the middle, to be able to make decisions about how things should work, how things should be configured, how code should be written, how things should be integrated. But sometimes project teams can't agree. Sometimes project teams make poor decisions, and those poor decisions typically look like a team that's making a decision that makes it easy on them, but makes it hard on everybody else. If I, as the project manager, perceive that the project team is having a difficulty coming to a decision, or they're making decisions that I find questionable, maybe they go against policy, maybe they're going to be expensive, then it's my prerogative as the project manager to escalate those decisions to the steering committee. And this is a group of people, typically stakeholders, or they may be the supervisors of some of the people on the project teams. And I will take those decisions to the steering committee and say, These decisions are pending. Help us make them. Sometimes these decisions are pretty big. They mean they impact policy. We may find ourselves wanting to change policy. Or maybe something's gone really wrong with the project and we are off course. We're not going to deliver on time. We're not going to deliver on budget. The project is at risk of going from green to yellow or red. And I also take those to the steering committee. But if it turns out that we're going to need to delay the project, get more funding, or ask for policy to be changed, then I escalate that to the executive sponsors level. And since I'm the director of IT's PMO, our chief information officer is a permanent member of the executive sponsors group for every project we do. A couple other things on this. I never want to see people type names on this page. Type the names in a fake email in Outlook, then copy them back to this page. You can see my name there says Fitzgerald, Kevin, HSC, and then my email address because I typed my name in an email and I copied it over. This means that you've got a unique identifier, their email address. You know which John Smith is on your project. It means that you're going to spell those names correctly. You know, a big bonus when communicating with people is not misspelling their names. And if I had 7 people on my steering committee and I wanted to have a meeting with them, then I could copy that bulleted list of their names and paste it into an email or a meeting invitation, and it would automatically resolve, remove the bullets, and make that an addressable message. This is the most important page of the project plan. Who's working on the project? The next page is about goals, objectives, and deliverables. And I'm not always able to define these for a project. But it's worth noting that if you have a list of goals provided to you from some leader, sometimes those goals can be very subjective. What you need to do as a project manager and as a project team is identify objectives that equal those goals. If we achieve these objectives, that achieves that goal. And objectives are definable, measurable, and achievable. Your goal is to connect achievable objectives to perhaps nebulous goals. And if you can, break down the deliverables that achieve those objectives. To get this objective, we're going to do this, and we're going to produce this thing. Here's an example. My goal is to be better looking. That's pretty subjective. So I broke it down into 2 objectives, losing 15 pounds, getting a facial. And then I broke those objectives down into deliverables. And I'm not going to read them to you, but you can see in the right column the specific things people are going to do to deliver something that achieves the objective, and achieving the objective achieves the goal. The next page of the project plan is the schedule. And this is another one of those items where we don't always have them, but I strive to try and get something in place. There are lots of ways to create a schedule. I'm a Microsoft project nerd. I love using Microsoft Project to make Gantt charts. I think Gantt charts like the one you see on the screen have the most information per square inch. In fact, I find the very opposite to be calendars. Traditional calendars, I don't think, are a very good way of explaining a schedule. But Microsoft Project's kind of challenging, it's kind of expensive, and not everybody thinks that way. In fact, there are lots of ways to do it. Here's one done in Excel. And this is by far the most common way that people do them. Excel is the most popular tool with project managers around the world. And I frequently see this from vendors. They bring in these charts done this way. So real common. But even just a simple bulleted list will get it done. And the reasoning for this is that we want to identify those milestones in our project where if we don't complete that work by that date, everything slides. Those milestones, like I mentioned, like the new semester or the new regulations occurring. We want people to see that coming well in advance. People need to understand that if we get behind and this date goes by and we're not done, really bad things will happen. The last page of my project plan is the communication plan. And as I mentioned, this page is mostly an instructional page. I'm going to show you a couple pieces of it. It defines that we are going to have a weekly status meeting. Now, this meeting, depending on the nature of the project, might be a 15-minute meeting where all of the lead people in the room explain what they got done last week, what they're going to do next week, and what, if anything, is blocking them. Those are the big important questions I ask people. What'd you get done? What are you going to do? What's blocking you? Because if you ask people those questions every week, they get used to the idea that they got to get something done, and they get used to the idea that they got to figure out what they're going to do next. And if something's blocking them, you, the project manager, need to know it because it's your primary job to address those blockers, get them resolved, get them out of the way so that your team can proceed. The 15 to 60-minute part is that the nature of some projects, the status meetings tend to be working sessions. You resolve problems. People talk about challenges they've got. You may literally be doing work in those meetings. Other projects are not that way at all. The working sessions are completely separate, and all I really need is 15 to 20 minutes to get the status. That results in the status report. This is the next template I'm going to show you. Those weekly status reports. At the end of every status meeting, we're going to send a status report that talks about what we discussed and the notes from that discussion, what happened, what's going to happen next, blockers and changes. Some projects, depending on the nature, I have a 30 to 60-minute meeting with my steering committee every month. Some projects are every month. I'm taking stuff to my steering committee saying, please help us make these decisions and we're going to go forward. Some projects I go to them every month and I give them a brief update on what's going on. Some projects I never meet with the steering committee. We were able to execute the project without their support. The last part of my communication plan involves change management. And really, some projects and project managers are heavily involved in change management for the changes that their project causes. And in some organizations, they're not. This may not pertain to you. But I like to explain to folks that there's multiple levels of change management. At the top levels, you've got executive sponsors deciding what to change, whether or not we're going to run the project. And at the next level, we've got the steering committee making decisions about the changes we're going to make in a given project. At the third level, this is where I find that project managers are typically involved. And this is a notification. This is the kind of thing like going to the business managers meeting or going to a staff senate meeting and explaining that we're running a project and these are the changes that are going to occur. It's getting out the word. Then at the bottom level is training. And training is typically owned by the functional owners of the system. You see, you want to make sure as a project manager that if we change a system, really good training is made available to the people that use that system so that they are able to adapt to the new reality. But you can't own it as a project manager. That team's going to have turnover and they're going to have to train new employees that come in. So training is typically owned by the functional folks. Your job as the project manager is to determine which of these are needed and make sure they get done, not necessarily that you do them. The steering committee's role is to resolve questions that the project team can't make. And yes, SME means subject matter experts. I should spell that out in my document. Thank you. So the conclusion for the project plan. First page serves as a charter. We're going to talk about the most important thing, who's running, who is on the project, and how we escalate and solve issues, which is governance. Then we hope to be able to define goals, objectives, and deliverables, a schedule, and we pay attention to the communication plan. Okay, this is the end of the first template I'm explaining. Do I have any questions? All right, let's talk about status reports. We do status reports in a completely different way than I have ever seen anybody do them, and I've never seen this in a book, but I am in love with this process. Our documents for status reports are a single document, and every time we have a meeting, that document has an entry in it, and it's in reverse chronological order. If you were to open the document, the first page has the most recent meeting, and it's I'm going to show you the pieces, but there's an agenda, there's the discussion about what got done, what we're going to do, blockers, changes. And at the end of every one of those meetings, that becomes the status report that is then sent to everybody listed on the teams page of the project plan. What's nice about doing it this way is that you end up with this really great log. Now, I say status meetings. If I were to have a meeting with the steering committee, that's in the same document. That's just another meeting in that document. Stakeholders, whatever it is, or excuse me, executive sponsors, any meeting I hold for this project, the agenda and what we discussed, what people got done, what we decided we're going to do is listed in reverse chronological order. This can be super handy. I had somebody ask me one time, hey, last year, you guys ran some speed tests for this project. Do you remember what it was? And the only thing I could remember was Rebecca ran the speed tests. So I searched my project log, this agenda/status report document for Rebecca, and found out that last November, Rebecca ran some speed tests. And sure enough, this thing really, really performs. So I responded to their question within 5 minutes. On this date, this person did this. And they think I'm some kind of genius because I can remember all this stuff. Nope. I'm some kind of genius, maybe, because I documented it all in one place and I knew where to go find it and search it. It's also very handy if you have to shift a project from one project manager to another. If you hand that to another project manager, they can now read backwards through the log and see exactly how we got here, exactly what kind of decisions have been made, and all of the progress. Each entry in the project, and I'm going to show you samples, starts with the date and meaning of the report, and I always put a page break there. So a page starts with the beginning of the report. I always put that project value statement, the overview that was in the project plan, it's at the top of every one of my status reports. All my stakeholders see that over and over and over again. The status, if it's green, yellow, or red, green being we're going to deliver on time within budget, yellow meaning we are at risk of not getting this done on time or needing more money, or red, we absolutely are not going to get this done on time or we are absolutely going to need more money. I mentioned the agenda, what was discussed, what notes were taken from it, a list of what was accomplished, planned, if there are blockers, if there are changes. You don't have to put them in that order. I find some of my project managers like to stick planned up near the top so that people see the action items first. But we also sometimes see sections called open questions. Sometimes we see a section called celebrated. I always put that at the top. Somebody did some really, really great job and I want to call them out and congratulate them. So I put that in there. I've seen things that said planned for the future, tasks we're not going to address right now, but that we will real soon. And it looks like this, basically. You see the date up there, status meeting, project value, synopsis, status, agenda. Notice in the accomplished and planned section how the sentences are structured. Those are active voice sentences that always go noun, verb, object. This person will do this for these reasons or these people by this date. The person's name, or if it's a team, is at the beginning of the sentence. That way, when they glance down through there, if they're reading through your status report, they easily see that there was an assignment that came out of that meeting. And then if there's blockers or changers, it's based on the RACI model. The whole idea is to get the information to people based on their role. So are you responsible for doing work? Then you're in the plan section. Are you accountable for making sure that that work got done? You should see your stuff in the accomplished section. Do you just need to be informed by the synopsis or the consultation that happened in the agenda, the things that were discussed? Let's talk about how the newspaper style applies to this. That first item there, the synopsis, that's my headline. This is a single sentence. If people are just vaguely interested in your project, they're going to come in and read that and go on. And while I left some parts of this out for this illustration, I like to think that if I have some people come through, glance at my status report, and they see it's green, and they don't even read the rest of it, that's okay. But I want to get my community around me used to the idea that if you get a status report and it says yellow, that needs you to stop, read down through what happened, and help me. And if it's red, I need you to call a friend to come help me. So this is my synopsis, a single sentence about what happens. These are the leading phrases. This is a sentence that or is it two sentences? Yeah, two sentences that just basically recaptures what happened. Here's the specific details of what happened. If you can write your business communications, whether they're status reports or not, in this style, I think you'll see better response from people because you're making it easier for them to get the information. Was there a question?
He did a sprint in the VR room. Was like, holy.
I don't think that was a question. I mentioned the 5 W's: who, what, when, where, why, and sometimes how. Just real quickly, you can really see in here who, and who is at the first word in every sentence, active voice sentences. What, they tested the connectivity and they ran load testing scenarios. When, Monday, something's got to get done before Tuesday because something starts on Tuesday. Where, in this particular report, it's about where the bugs were that they fixed. Why? Because of these bugs and a blocked port. So these are all examples of a status report covering things, all 5 W's, and being arranged in a way so that people get the information they need, and it's presented to them in a way that they can digest further and further and further by going into your report or just reading the first few words. Now, a practical way of thinking about how this works. Let's say that my project's been running for several weeks. My job, 2 days, 3 days before the next meeting, is to draft the next report. I'm going to copy last week's report, paste it at the top of the document, change the date. I'm going to review all the issues and assignments in the last report. Maybe since the last report said Bob's going to set up the database. And a couple of days later, I noticed an email that went by that said Bob got the database set up. So when I draft the next status report, I'll move that item from the plan section to the accomplished section and change the wording to past tense. Bob will set up to Bob set up. But I also want to make sure, are there decisions? Are there new planned items? Do we realize that there's new tasks that need to be done? I'm going to put those in there because I'm going to ask myself, what is next? What can I do to remove blockers or miscommunications? Are we ready for the next milestone? This exercise of looking at last week's report, examining your email, and preparing for the next one is a weekly cycle of making sure that things stay on track and progress keeps being made. Then I send that draft to the project team 1 or 2 days before the meeting. Let's say that Bob in the last meeting, it says going to set up the database, but he hasn't done it yet. But he gets my draft agenda 2 days before the next status meeting, remembers he had this job to set up the database, and gets it done before the meeting. I sometimes call this hustling the team, reminding them of the commitments they made to get tasks done. And no harm, no foul. We get to the next status meeting and Bob's got the database done, or he got it done by whatever date it was needed. We're good to go. Sometimes, and I advocate not sending. Do you include all of this information in the body? Yes, I do. My status report that, see if I can get this. This thing right here is in the body of the email. I don't attach them, and I don't send links when I send the status report. When I'm sending the draft, so one thing to be really clear, the final status report after the status meeting goes to everybody that was on that Teams page of your project plan. But when I'm sending the draft, then for the next status meeting, that just goes to people in the meeting. That's just reminding them that this is what we're going to talk about. And at the end of the meeting, we then have a completed status report we can send. When the meeting is heard, I share my screen with the document. I write the status report and take notes while they can see it. I want them to know what I'm committing them to when I write down that Bob's going to get the database set up. I want them to correct it if they name some obscure technology and I misspell it. I want them to see that. And what we do is we go through all of the items we're going to discuss. We'll talk about what got accomplished, what's planned, blockers, and changes. Then I go to my email and I find the email where I sent the last status report that went to everybody, steering executives, vendors, those not involved in the meetings. And I reply to all. I never start a new email unless it's the very first status report for the project. I reply to all. I paste it at the top. and I include the previous 3 status reports. If you get a status report from me for October 1st, the very top of it's the report for October 1st. But if you scroll down, you'll see the one for the previous week, previous week, previous week, 4 of them. This is super. I've had lots of people tell me how much they enjoy this, that they sometimes miss the status report and they want to read through them. Or more importantly, your project goes from green to yellow, then your constituents that are getting these status reports will read back through the history of that whole month and see how we got here. Status reports are the most essential component. I talk about lean and meaningful, which is getting rid of useless documents, getting rid of busy work and things. And while I advocate that these 3 documents I'm talking about today are really crucial, if you told me you were only going to do one thing, then it's status reports. You're not going to have a project plan. Okay, that's not great. Do the status reports, because this is the thing, the engine that keeps the train on the tracks. It drives Deming's cycle of plan, do, check, act on a weekly basis. Okay. Any question about status reports? No, the draft is in the body of the email. I only include a link to it because I like it when my team members. Now, you may not like this. I'm very risk tolerant, and I want people to feel comfortable going into my status report document and moving their own tasks from planned into accomplished, or adding their own agenda items to the discussion section. I don't have other courses that break down these models. I've got another course I teach called Power and Leadership for Project Managers. It's not about documentation. It's about ways of influencing people that are appropriate and effective for project managers. But no, this presentation I here have is essentially designed around a lunch and learn presentation.
Do you recommend always sending out the status report, even when, I guess, just like after every single meeting, anytime
Yes.
there's notes taken, you send it out immediately after?
Yes,
right?
I don't. There's an old paradigm about this where project managers every Friday sent status reports for what happened that week. And what it did is it kind of turned us into reporters, which ties into my newspaper theme, but I don't like that. I don't like the idea that you're going around finding out what happened and reporting it at the end of the week, because you don't need to be following people. You need to be leading them. We need to be sending this draft of the status report before the meeting to encourage them to do things, getting them in the meeting, calling them out on, did you get this done? What do we need to discuss? What decisions do we need to make? And then I want that information to go out while it's fresh. I advocate for my project managers that the report gets sent out within 30 minutes after the meeting. People get that reminder in their email of what they committed to do or what we decided right away. And it has nothing to do with weekly. Typically, project status meetings occur like every Tuesday or every Wednesday. But if I had a steering committee meeting on a Thursday morning, I would take pretty much that same format. What are we going to discuss? What was been accomplished by the steering committee? What's planned for the steering committee? And then right after that meeting, I'm sending out that report to all of those same people. And I typically do the last 4. And it's something that I just talked with my peers around me. Thank you, Christy. Asking them questions about how far back is this information valuable. I actually started by sending all of them. And I had a project that ran for 2 years, and I was sending emails to people that was causing their Outlook client to lock up because the emails were so big. So that wasn't it was a dumb idea. So I've done that to about a month, and that seems to work.
Gotcha. And then the next email that you're talking about, where it's before the next meeting and it has like the agenda, but also the planned items, that's a separate thread than the one with the completed status reports?
Yes, I probably ought to change this to explain it a little more clearly. I do one-off emails to just the project team in the status meeting of this is the draft. I do reply to all emails to everybody on that page for the formal status report. I don't want the other stakeholders and stuff seeing my draft. I want them to see what comes out after the meeting.
Okay.
All right, let's talk about the closure document. The closure document is not about getting things done for the project. It's really about capturing valuable information for future projects. I remember we ran a particular project that involved some kind of a database replacement. And I had this DBA in the room who was kind of a curmudgeon. And when we got done, I know I'm going to call him a curmudgeon. I've done it to his face. And when we got done, I said, we're going to do this closure meeting. He said, what for? I said, I want to find out what we did that worked and what didn't work and keep it from happening in the future. Okay, fine. We got to a project that was very similar to that project I had run. And I started that project by reviewing the lessons learned document from the previous project. And that guy brightened up and bought in. After that, when I ran lessons learned meetings with the teams, he came with ideas because he loved the idea that we were trying to make the projects better as we went along. I do want to point out something interesting about this. I have a document template and I will send it to you. But the goal is not to create a closure report in that Word template. The closure report is just the last status report. Your last status report for your project, which is the closure report, goes in the very same document as all the other agenda status reports. It gets sent out exactly the same way. It's just the last status report. So I've got a template for the content that goes in it. But what I actually do is I complete all of that content, paste it into my agenda last status report. If you were to pull up the status report document from a completed project in my PMO and open it up, the first page is the closure report, how we closed it. And what you see there on the screen is an example of the template where the instructions are in green. That green text is not part of it. It's instructions on how to do it. So don't include that in the status report. That looks kind of silly. This is what it looks like. First of all, we start with the project value delivered. The pretty much statement of the overview with the strategic value, except change to past tense. We delivered this great project, delivered this great strategic value. We list any outstanding tasks because sometimes you close projects even though there's a few more things to do. And I want to identify those. Person will do this by this date. Sometimes there's things in a project that you're not going to be able to do for whatever reason, and they get delayed to some future project. And so I like to identify those. The big item in these, though, is what we call the lessons learned. And while the point is what bad things happened and how do we keep them from happening again, I always start with what good things happened. Starting the conversation with some good things is usually a more positive way of dealing with this. And I advocate that project managers should come up with some items and put them in here to start with so you can start the conversation. But you have to be careful about this. I have seen closure report meetings degenerate into venting and people becoming angry about things or wanting just to make sure that everybody understands that they didn't get what they want. And you have to be careful about managing people through this process that I know you didn't get what you want. We're here to make sure you get what you want next time. Consequently, I would not schedule a closure report on Monday or Friday afternoon. In fact, I avoid afternoons at all. I would rather have them in the morning. When I did closure meetings in person, I brought chocolate. The last element of my status closure report are some things that are specific to OU. I would like to tell you that I invented this, but it was actually our previous CIO that asked for some of these things to be included. And me and my project management team discussed that and expanded it into this list. Our closure report also includes links to technical artifacts, like if there was a risk assessment done. I want somebody to be able to pull up my status report and then go find that risk assessment or that data governance ticket or that knowledge base articles or the training that we made available. A login. Where is this thing that you implemented? And there are some other internal project artifacts like, was there a go, no go checklist? Was there a statement of work? I like somebody to be able to look at what happened and go, gosh, I want to go look at the original statement of work. Your goal is to complete each section in the closure template, but you're going to put it in, as I mentioned, the agenda status report document and send it as the last status report. Your subject My subject of my status report emails typically say project name, status report dash date. This one would say project name, closure report dash date. Then, as project managers, we've got to go do some house cleaning. You may have open purchase orders from vendors that provided services. Those need to be closed. You may have created accounts for external people to be able to help you configure or code the system. And if your project is over, we don't want those people having access anymore. So make sure those accounts get deactivated. Moving project documentation. We use a set of SharePoint storage folders for all of our project documentation. And I got a project folder that says active projects, one that says completed projects, canceled projects, projects on hold. And then updating the portfolio. We have a SharePoint portfolio list that lists all of our projects, and it's got about 25 data points about every project. That portfolio drives a Power BI dashboard. And I want to make sure that when we finish a project, my project manager goes in and changes the status of that item in the portfolio from active to completed. So in conclusion, my reason that I came up with these stripped down templates and this way of doing things was because my environment was primarily all about getting it done. I rarely found people enjoying advanced project management documents and techniques. They just wanted to know, how could we get it done? It's about making sure that you define measurable objectives that you can achieve. And we use 3 simple documents for it. The plan, that's my agreement. Something I missed when I was talking about that. Whenever I write a project plan, I draft it, and then I get as many people on that, the steering committee, stakeholders, I get them all in a meeting room, a Zoom room, and we go through the project plan. And if there's empty spaces, we complete it. And then when we're all done with it, I go, okay, does everybody agree that this is the plan? Great. And you can do this as a kind of a part of a kickoff, where you show the plan and explain this is what's going on. In some organizations, they have people sign project plans. I've never found OU to be an organization where people were willing to sign documents. So I basically just go over the project plan with all of the people involved in the project and say, this is what we're going to do. Speak now or forever hold your peace. The status reports are your formal communication during the project that keep things on the rails and running. And your closure report is the important information for the future. All right, that's what I had to talk about today. What questions do you have?